We are recording.
Okay, I'm Danny Lutz, and I am the 8th generation of Burns's on North American shores. My umpteenth great-grandfather, William Burns, came to America, Fredericktown, New Jersey, in 1761, and he married into the Van Meter clan over here in Frederick and settled in what's now Berkeley County and is buried over there. His descendants have lived in Jefferson County and environs ever since. The Burns family has had a long tradition, if you will, in Jefferson County, being on, if not directly involved, on the periphery of the major events that have been involved in the county. The present Burnses, one group of them, lives at Locust Hill, which was built in 1785. Well, the Burnses always called it Locust Hill. And I realize that that's a clash with the Packet Place out there on Tuscaloosa. At any rate, it seems as the Burnses had, as I say, they had a long tradition through the Revolution, and they did their part in that little conflagration. 1864 seems to have been the pivotal year affecting the Burns family as much as any other. In following the skirmish between John Mosby and his partisan Rangers and Blazer's Union Company at Ripon, one of Blazer's officers had his horse shot from under him, and rather than be captured with the rest of the command, he ran across fields, what's now the Allen place, over to the Burns farm, Locust Hill, looking for a horse, not finding any. He ran through the back door at Locust Hill, couldn't find anyone home, ran out the front door, and then went across the road to Sunnyside, where he was able to steal a horse and ride to Charlestown and get help for the beleaguered command. It was interesting because Captain Blazer had bragged in the Northern press that within a month he would capture Mosby, only Mosby turned the tables on him at Ripon. On my grandfather's side, also in the south end of the Jefferson, was the Hill family, and Samuel Hill, one of the grandfathers back in that time, was a blacksmith in Cabletown. Now this is strictly family lore, but they say that when the Confederate soldiers came through, that he would do the farrier treatment for them, put the shoes on, trim hooves and such, and just take whatever payment he could get. When the Union troops came through, they would order him to do the work, and they would end up with wooden shoes that had been covered with pitch. And needless to say, a few miles down the road, they had problems. I'm surprised that he lived to tell about it, but he did. And another bit of family lore, that period, was when Martindale's 12th New York is who I'm told the cavalry came through on their burning spree from Kearneysville into Loudoun County, and they burned all the mills on the South Fork of the Bullskin Run. But they came to the Burns farm, which is actually a lock farm, and actually was the home of William Myers Locke, who was a major in the Confederate commissary. They found Grandmother Locke, that is the captain of the 12th New York, barged into the house at Birdland, and he found Grandmother Locke with 2 infant children in the parlor in their grave clothes waiting for a funeral service. And something came over him, and he said, "There's been enough tragedy here," and he ordered his command not to burn anything on the Birdland farm, and he said to have struck a mark on the door jamb with his saber, saying that wherever anybody saw his saber mark, they were not to burn. In any case, it must have been true because Birdland was spared and a lot of other farms in the area were not. And as I mentioned earlier, the mills suffered to the tender mercies of the Union troops. Among them, the Haynes Mill, which I presently own, became known as the Haynes-Fagans Mill and the Fagans Mill, and now I have it. It was burned in 1864. Well, Nathan and Abram Haynes, affiliated with the Hopewell Meeting House over near Winchester in the 1750s. I had been informed that the mill was built in 1740, but that apparently is not true, because for the Haynes to have not come till the 1750s makes the creation of the mill somewhat suspect in 1740. But at any rate, they bought over 700 acres of land from different people, and the Haynes brothers established the grist mill. It stayed in the Haynes family up until the 1850s, when it fell, like a lot of other enterprises in America at the time, fell on economic hard times. And the Haynes family was able to hold it into the Civil War till it was burned. Around 1868, Isaac Fagans bought a 1/2 interest in the mill from the Fagans heirs, and the mill, as I said, was operated then as the Haynes-Fagans Mill until 1900, when Wilder and Preston Fagans bought it out completely. They operated the mill until 1943, when it was closed, and that also involved another fire in 1937, from which the present mill was built on the ashes. They ground buckwheat into flour, cornmeal, white flour from wheat, barley, rye, and oats. And I still have some examples of 2 of the meal sacks that were actually printed for the use of the mill. And also I've got 2 Christmas cards that they used to send out. That's in the days when you actually did send out Christmas cards in the mail.